I'm going to sit down with Becca Paoletti from CakeWorks. And we're going to chat about everything in terms of future of video and elsewhere. I
I
like the
promised you.
backdrop. All right, we're gonna tell people you got to plug it in right now. If you name that background, we'll give a shout out to who can name it. But Becca, thanks so much for joining me today. She's the co-founder and CEO of
Good one.
CakeWorks. They're an award-winning video agency and consultancy that leverages the power of video to ignite sustainable, profitable, high-growth media businesses. With more than 80 clients, billions of views driven, and hundreds of millions of incremental video dollars captured, she and her team spend their days in the video trenches. She's an industry-leading expert in digital video strategy, programming, and monetization with more than 2 decades of experience in digital media. For CakeWorks, she was head of video for Yahoo's North America division, where she quadrupled company's video revenue in less than 4 years. Well, she still prefers large screen video experiences, movie theaters, and outdoor projections, but you've developed an after hours addiction to Instagram Reels and TikTok. Huh?
We'll
Yeah,
see.
I finally gave in and downloaded TikTok the other day,
I
and
know
I was
since the last time we
stuck.
talked, right?
Yes, I was stuck on like all of like the
I knew
funny
I'd win you
videos.
over.
Exactly. But Becca, I want to kick it off by first talking to you a little bit about, there's so many stats out there about video and about the
Mm,
future of video.
mm.
What's your favorite one today?
I mean, I have so many, but I think given like what we want to talk about today and all of the things that have come up, especially in your presentation and the overall sort of keynote and meat behind this, I'm going to talk about YouTube. It feels very
Ah,
retro. It does feel very retro. It launched in 2005. So, but my stat for YouTube is that YouTube has 2.3 billion users globally. So just let that sit for a second. 2.3 billion users globally. It's the largest platform over anything, anywhere except for Facebook, and 1 billion hours of video review daily. 1 billion hours of video review daily, which means if everyone in the world, every single person in the world were watching video every day, they would be consuming 8 minutes, more than 8 minutes, 8.5 minutes of video on YouTube every day. So just from an impact, trend point, a historical sort of documentary of how video has exploded. I just want to talk about that. So YouTube, my number one stat, and it's the second most used search engine, Google obviously being the first, but not only is the second most, it has more searches per day than Yahoo, Microsoft, Bing, Ask.com, and AOL combined. So when you're talking about how video is being used and what's happening, and especially what's happening with younger generations, like YouTube is their search engine. Everything that they do is being used in video, and YouTube has been at the forefront of that. So, we've had many clients over the years who are like, oh, it's just cat videos, and now it's obviously like fueled a whole creator economy. So I think let's just talk about YouTube as my stat of the day.
amazing. Yeah, I mean it's so funny. Like I think I heard years ago even that like millennials would rather turn to YouTube than
Sure.
anything else to learn a new skill.
Yeah.
Right. And that's not even like the Gen Zers who like that's a whole different thing. We'll talk about that later. But
Mm-hmm.
in your opinion, is it important for every company and brand to have YouTube on their radar or have a YouTube strategy?
I think it's incredibly important to understand the mechanism of YouTube as a search engine, for sure. From an SEO perspective, from an information gathering, from an information dissemination perspective, YouTube is critical. But not all companies are created equal. Obviously, we work mostly with media companies, brands, sports teams, leagues, etc. Video is very crucial to the experience. It's not essential to everyone all the time, but if you are going after younger demographics, we're used to communicating exclusively via Snapchat and other video mechanisms. It's really, really critical for your audience.
Absolutely. And so, you've been in digital media for your entire career.
Yeah.
Is this time any different than times before? Like, is it more imperative now to be thinking about video strategy than any other point in time in the past 20 years?
I mean, I think it's always been very important. It's, there's been television before any of us
Mm-hmm.
were we were consuming it, and certainly it's gotten more interactive and more fun and easier and cheaper to create. And there are micro and macro economies that are being evolved from video that didn't exist, as early as 5 years ago. So it's moving fast. There are very few barriers to entry. There's a lot of choice, and there are a lot of tools out there that enable, the youngest users to create really awesome video, interactive elements, call outs, shoppable, communications, ask questions, deliver information. So all of that has made the industry a lot more fun, and a lot more profitable.
One thing that we'd heard from a couple of different experts that we interviewed, right, is that probably they believe that in at least like the next 10 years, there's going to be a single creator who, leveraging all of these tools, is actually able to compete or like win an Oscar, I think was like the word that they were using.
Yep.
Do you think that that's true? Like, is the all these tools that are making it easier and cheaper and more accessible to produce, is it really going to enable a single producer to compete in a real fashion?
I think we talked about that a little bit too once before. I think, with a shout out to all the artists on out in the audience. I mean, telling a good narrative, winning an Oscar, there's a lot of special effects, there's a lot of creation, there's a lot of, behind the scenes, there's all the talents of the actors involved, and you can obviously create them. And some of our friends, Synesthesia and others, have showed how you can create other people as part of, the experience. But I do think the arc of narrative storytelling is really important. And the things that are winning Webbies and Streamies and digital video awards are, yes, very custom based by platform. Yes, they know the audience really well. Yes, a lot of them have really cool special effects and animations. And you look at all the gaming and look at the creative tools that are leveraged there. But at the end of the day, there has to be a really good story. So if you have a single creator who's also a director and a storyteller and can create that arc, they can win for sure. But it's not just mechanical. You really actually have to be able to tell a story.
That's great. Sorry about that. I think that my internet just pieced out for a second, but I'm back. I don't know if anybody saw me frozen in a really funky way there. But I'm so glad to hear about that arc of storytelling, and the storytelling is the most important. That makes sense. The creative is the most important part of
the tools are
content.
amazing. I mean, what they allow you to do are amazing, and they've also given so many people the floor and access to be able to be in an environment which they never would have been able to do. Like pitching a Hollywood studio is not an easy accomplishment. Having an agent is not necessarily reasonably cost or effective. And I think, for people to be able to use these tools and get their moments out there, I mean, certainly during the pandemic, new comics received, millions and millions of views, and they got their name out there and started to make money. And lots of kids were able to do really amazing things with video and tweet them out or Snapchat them out or be part of, all kinds of video gaming experiences. So it changed the game and makes it all a lot more democratic, I think, at the end of the day.
That's great. And, so having led creative strategy for so many different award-winning pieces and projects, what's been your favorite so far? Who's the best creative director?
Oh my gosh, no, that's like having a favorite child. So no. So no. But I think I really think from our experience, where we've really been pleased is where traditional media companies were willing to embrace new tech and new platforms. So, using Snapchat for a television network is a challenge. And how do you embrace that? And how do you reach those audiences? And how do you understand that the people that are watching your shows on television, traditional television, or streaming OTT are very different from the ones that are actually there and capturing, on Snapchat, on Instagram Reels and other places. So I think we're most rewarded when we can help educate through the process of a new platform and also see the value at the end, thousands and millions more viewers, and obviously incremental revenue on it is helpful.
Definitely. All right, so then we're gonna play a rapid fire game for you.
Okay, I'm ready.
Platforms of choice.
I have my coffee
ready?
too. Yep.
You got it. All right. So Netflix or Hulu?
Netflix.
Facebook or Insta?
Insta.
TikTok or Snap?
TikTok.
Oh,
and my son would say Snap.
Woody. Oh, that's so interesting.
Yeah.
Okay. OnlyFans or Cameo?
Cameo.
Twitch or caffeine?
Twitch.
YouTube or is there anybody who competes with YouTube?
I mean, a lot of people think they do, but at the end of the day, it's YouTube is definitely the big and overarching winner on that side of things.
That's good. So, internally, we've kind of been going back and forth, not just on favorite platforms, but also on, on this idea of quality of the content versus the quantity and the
Mhm,
contextual relevance, right?
mhm.
And Evan and I have had many conversations about this, and it's kind of a toss up. How do you think about ranking them in terms of importance today? Is it always quality? Like, is quality always queen? Or, you have to continue to produce a significant amount to stay at the top of the algorithms too, right?
Yes, so my co-founder loves to say tonnage. Like it's like tonnage really matters to the algorithm point, right? And to like actually being able to test and tweak and get a lot of things out there and across platforms and to really just distinguish and differentiate yourself in a very crowded place. But back to the quality question, quality is different depending on the audience, and I think that is a really important piece to just focus on. Meaning, if you are a television studio and you're used to creating television for television environments and living rooms, there is an expectation of what that looks like, what you'll be willing to wait for an ad to watch, what you'll be willing to pay for, like all of those things. There's an expectation there of what that means to a certain demo. Then there's an
Yep.
expectation to gamers of like how the game works, what what the characters are like, how the landscapes work, and also sort of the plot and overarching narrative of the game. The quality has different faces and colors in that world too. And then in social, quality is actually authenticity. Meaning, if you have like a very perfectly shot, super expensive movie trailer that you run on Facebook, for example, that will have an impact. But actually, more of an impact will be like a picture of your best friend and her kid who went to see the movie outside the studio. We're like, thumbs up, it was awesome. Like the expectation in social media is that it's people that recommendations from friends. It's all very authentic. It's shot on phone. It's like where people were right at this moment. And typically, we see very highly produced, highly polished, very expensive video do less well on social media than some of the shorter forms, things that the user generated content, like partners like Jukin and others can aggregate and produce. Like those, that's what people expect on social, and it will perform much better on social typically. That's my quality. Quality is yes, and
Quality
yes
is
to what
relative.
killed Cribby. Very nice comment I see in the chat. Cribby is a whole other conversation we don't have time for today, but I have a lot to say on the topic.
Well, and I also have kind of like a little bit of a conundrum around it, because it is, everybody talks about the authenticity, right? And like the real world experiences, but in a lot of ways it's not necessarily real still. Like it's still very curated, right? And it's still very well manicured by even the individuals who are creating it at the moment. But I think that one of the lines there is like this snackable video, right? Like, so the video on Facebook is getting a lot more views than something that's necessarily like coming through your cable box, right? And so with snackable video being all of the rage, how are you thinking about content diversification, not only in like the types of content, right, like the highly produced versus like the lower produced, but also the length of it?
Yeah, I mean that it really matters. So typically when we're starting off with a client, and I would say anyone who's in the media space or anyone who's looking at how to manage video investment, you have to look at the audience. Number one, who is the audience that you're trying to reach? You have to start all of these businesses with that, right? Like unless someone uses your product, it's not worth anything. So number one is audience, and number two is what platform is that audience on? So, you can extend and you can shadow and you can have aspirational platforms, but you've got to find out where your core audience is actually operating. And then your content strategy goes from there. So if like they're all about Netflix, to my speed round, then what you're creating has to be suited for Netflix, has to be long form, has to be the quality of, investment to match the celebrity talent, to match the other things that are happening there. If your audience is hanging out on Instagram, all they're doing is reels and everything is vertical, A, you better be making vertically shot video, and B, you better understand the links and the expectations and commentary and the other things that go along with it. So there isn't necessarily a one size fits all when it comes to video creation or video formats or length or investment. It's really figuring out who your audience is and what they want to consume.
That makes sense. And are you guys thinking about how live stream fits into this whole strategy, right? Like, are more and more of your customers thinking about how they can really generate live stream content?
Yeah, I think live used to be very scary. There weren't platforms that supported it. I actually ran the first live stream that Yahoo ever had, and it was, I mean, this is like really dating, but the first live stream that Yahoo ever had was Michael Jackson's funeral. And why I remember this is because the moment that Brooke Shields had a tear is when the feed cut out. And it was like epically disastrous, of course, for everyone. I mean, we brought it back, and it remained like one of the most popular live streaming events Yahoo had for many, many years. But I do remember like there was just this. Everyone went into it feeling like we won't be able to scale. We can't do this. Live streaming is so complicated. The servers can't support it. We don't know how many concurrents we have. Like it just, there weren't the metrics. There wasn't the support. There wasn't the bandwidth. There wasn't, for every reason. And user expectation was that live video would feel like television. We didn't have the learnings. Like for you, you just blinked out and no one cared, right? It's like we know what happens in a live video environment. We know things flip. We know things can be blurry. We understand that, Wi-Fi can go out, that weather storms can come, like all of these things, which for people that are used to television don't understand that. And it's like, it becomes a life or death situation. They get super freaked out. So we've all evolved, like everyone's learned and changed their expectations, and the technology is super caught up. So you can measure, you have metrics, you can insert ads, you can insert animations, you can do multi-screen, like all of these things that make live like much more what we're used to. And also there's all the live video that you do for social, whether that's FaceTime or Snapchat or Instagram or whatever. Like there's so many other ways that people are informally using live video in their day-to-day that makes it a much easier and much less risky proposition for even the largest brands.
It makes a lot of sense, right? Like maybe it goes back to even that authenticity side of things, is that like we want it to be real. We don't want to be polished and perfect in a lot of ways. And so, Dale put a question into the chat about how we see the advertisement changing between influencer placements and brand driven experiences, right? Like you mentioned product placement and live streams, animations and things like this. And there's a lot of new opportunities for tools that can help to automate the production of it, right? But do you see advertisers where do you see them being more interested in somebody who's a great TikTok star, like showcasing their product, or producing something themselves?
Great question. Advertisers have gotten very advanced in their thinking. I mean, it's amazing, like what they learn, the investments that they're making on the data side, on the user side, on the content side. Like they are really looking at the best way, the most efficient way, and the most innovative way to reach their target audience. So they will actually ask the question, what am I trying to do? Who am I trying to reach? What's the action that I want them to take? Is this a brand awareness? I'm trying to beat out some competitor in the market. Is this a buy my product? Like I want it to get directly to a shop. Is it a new audience that they're going after? So like they've traditionally reached the chief household officer, like the moms who are making all the purchase decisions in the house, but now they want to go after the teen who's making like brand decisions for the rest of their life. Like there are all these pieces that have to factor in, and then they go after the platforms and they start looking at like, what's the best way? Like who's the influencer that is the biggest, person for these guys? Like, we've done a lot of work with Gen Z, and you look at, who they're influenced by and who they're responding to and what type of authenticity they're requiring from a video perspective. And, looking back into the investments of the brands that they buy and interact with, they have to be very climate change focused. They have to be very gender neutral. They have to really have a passion for the issues and the real world concerns that Gen Z has. And they actually don't care about any of the actors or actresses that we care about. So like Brad Pitt walking by is like nothing to them. Madonna walking by is nothing to them. But put a TikToker that they're used to interacting with.
Charli D'Amelio walking down the street.
Charli D'Amelio is everything. So I think those are the things that brands are getting very smart about, and they're definitely like shifting their investment and their outreach to influencers to find the right representative of their brand to the right audience.
That's great. And so if you had one thing that you'd advise brands to invest in now in order to secure their success over the next 5 years, would it be that? Would it be finding like the right people who are on brand for them, or would it be something different?
I think it's really knowing the tools that you have in front of you, really understanding the capabilities back to the YouTube example, like how big YouTube is and what it can do for SEO for you and how people are using it to make, decisions and how to's and understanding there. It's which restaurant to pick, which hotel to go on, which seat in the airline to pick, like which clothing is going to look better. Like there's so many use cases for YouTube that I think brands are missing. But I also think that really understanding the media by which their core audience is interacting is very important. And most of that, honestly, is in video.
That's great. So understanding your core audience for all you Fortune 500s out there. Think about it. All right, I want to play a rapid fire game with you one more time because this time is going by so quickly. And I know we've got a hard stop here. So this game is called 5 years, 10 years, or 20. Right. So tell us if you think it's going to happen
no
in
commentary,
5 years.
just 5, 10, 20.
You can have some commentary if you want.
Okay. All right.
Death of cable TV.
I have to do some math, but it's whenever the boomers who are addicted to their television programming are no longer with us. Call it 20.
I like it.
The death of cable TV is only when the people who watch it are no longer here. That's it.
I don't want to think about that, Grandpa.
I know, but everyone else is adapting, but I think there's still a core audience that's really using it.
What about NFTs with utility, like unique access, etc.?
Wait, what about NFTs?
5 years, 10 years, or 20 years down the line. NFTs with actual utility.
5 or less.
Awesome. 2D to 3D live broadcasting.
5. I'm 5, 10, 20?
5, 10, or 20.
Okay.
What about when is the fourth wall going to crumble?
I mean, 10, it's crumbling, but I think user adoption is going to be an issue.
Okay. What about AR glasses? I talked about them a little bit earlier. When are they going to become the thing?
Well, I think AR experiences are a thing. I mean, we've covered them at LDV for the last few years, I think. So I think AR is for sure a thing. Like the glasses, there's a privacy issue and a creativity issue and sort of distraction issue. So the tipping point of the spear will adopt in less than 5 years. Will everyone ever adopt them? I don't know. Will everyone ever adopt virtual reality? I'm not sure. It really takes, a use case for when it's valuable to you.
That's great. Are you thinking about the metaverse in terms of your clients and brands?
For sure. I mean, we're working on 2 NFT projects right now, and looking at what's happened with the entire marketplace from a client relationship perspective, from clients to customers perspective, from our own team building and how we manage across our universe in a very remote world. Certainly critical, and I think there are so many tools that make this more interesting but also more useful. So we can't all be participating in metaverse just from an entertainment or kind of whimsical perspective. Like it actually has to have utility, and I think a lot of new chat and workspace collaboration tools that are give you an avatar and enable you to interact in kind of a more real way. Like that is actually why I put myself into this movie, because I was like, I could be at this museum, I could be watching this with them, and for all it's I could have gone back in time, or I could be really there. So we often play a game which is like, is that a real background or a Zoom, like a photo background, which is like going around the table to see who's like really there and who's somewhere else. But
fantastic. Well, that's great.
I think it is.
And so Becca gave you a last hint on the background, right? Like Chris, I think you nailed it. It is Ferris Bueller's
He was first. Yep.
Yeah, but they actually got the Art Institute of Chicago as well, so they knew that one.
Very great.
Well, Becca, thank you so much for joining us and sharing all your wisdom. It was super insightful. Really appreciate it.